Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to say thank you to everyone gathered here. Myself, Satyanathan, convener, IIC Vel. I feel honored to welcome you all to this event session on achieving problem solution fit and product market fit. It's a pleasure to invite our resource person for this event, Mr. Atanu Chowdhury, founder and CEO, GrabCut Private Limited, Capsule Labs. Welcome, sir. Veltech TBI and IIC is grateful to Mr. Atanu Chowdhury, sir, for the acceptance of our invitation and for sharing your valuable time with us, sir. Veltech TBI and IIC is regularly conduct series of events for fostering the culture of innovation, design thinking, patent filing, and all startup related activities across our educational institute. As a part of this, and on behalf of Veltech, IIC, and TBI, today we are conducting this event to cultivate new ideas in fresh minds of Veltech and to other institute students and startups, and to encourage student startups and faculty startups in all over the India. Finally, I welcome all the participants to this event. Thank you, sir. About our chief guest, our resource person, Mr. Atanu Chowdhury. Atanu Chowdhury is the founder and managing director of GrabCut. He is a techno-functional consultant for IoT and AI-led curriculum development and digital transformation ventures. He is a technology advisor to the Ranmir Foundation and its incubator. He is part of the board of mentors at the Atal Incubation Center, Sikkim Manipal University Technology Business Incubator, KL University Technology Business Incubators Foundation, and also Atal Community Innovation Center at SGT University. He has developed the curriculum and taught Internet of intelligent process automation.
Okay, Pantamna industry is what
provide delivery and solution support to market. IoT was a member of technical staff at Infosys, Set Labs, Harvard Sensors Networking Lab, Telcordia Advanced Technology Solutions Lab, and Blue Highway. He has postgraduate degrees in computer science from IIT Guwahati and Harvard University. He is a senior member of IEEE and CSI. He has published over 35 papers and patents in the area of IoT and wireless sensor networks during his active research career. He brings in over two decades of transnational professional experiences. Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir, for this event. The session is yours, sir. Please carry on.
Thank you, sir. So, from my side as well, welcome to all the participants and all the dignitaries who are gathered here today. And I wanted to talk about an area which is very close to me because as we incubate various kinds of organizations, various kinds of startups, I often see that they struggle with, even though there is a great idea, many of the startups struggle after 6 months, 8 months, or a couple of years down the line for not being able to achieve what we call as the problem solution fit or the product market fit. So I thought that this is a topic that deserves a lot more attention and probably a deeper exploration in terms of how do we go about doing it, right? So I'm going to start off with, before I start, one more thing is please feel free to ask questions. Please feel free to stop me if necessary and ask questions, because the more questions we have, the more interactive the session becomes, and probably those questions help the others who are gathered here today, right? So in order to get into this problem solution fitment, I probably wanted to start with an example, right? So imagine that you are planning a surprise birthday party for your best friend, right? And your goal is to throw the perfect party that will make them feel loved and celebrated. Now, to do that, you need to figure out what they really enjoy and what would make them happiest. So think of the problem as trying to figure out what gift to give your friend, right? You wouldn't just randomly pick any gift off the shelf and hope that they like it, right? Instead, what you will do is you will spend time thinking about what they enjoy, what their hobbies are, and what's that they have mentioned wanting in the past. Right? So these are markers. This is like identifying essentially the problem, understanding what your friend truly needs and wants. Right? So I use two words over there, needs and wants. They're going to be important as we progress. Now, let's say you come up with an idea to get them a new video game, right? And you want to get them a new video game because you know that they will love, that they love gaming. Right? So that is your proposed solution to the problem of getting them a gift. The gift you think will solve the problem of finding the perfect present, right? But here's the catch. If your friend doesn't actually like video games or already has that particular game, then your solution doesn't really fit the problem. And that is the challenge. So problem solution fit is like finding the perfect gift that perfectly matches with what your friend wants and needs. So it's about understanding their preferences and choosing a solution that best addresses their specific solution, their specific situation. So in entrepreneurship, problem solution fitment essentially means finding a solution that truly meets the needs of your customers or users. So it's like, just like finding the perfect gift for your friend, right? So it's about making sure that your product or service is exactly what your target audience is looking for. So formally, the problem solution fit is a concept in entrepreneurship. So essentially, this is the concept, right? In entrepreneurship and product development, this refers to the alignment between a problem faced by a target market and the solution provided by a product or service. So this fitment is an alignment. It has to line up properly, right? Whatever it is that your target group wants or needs and what you are offering. And a good problem solution fitment or a good alignment essentially indicates whether a proposed solution effectively addresses the needs or the pain points or the desires of the intended users. Right? The problem solution fit, it has, what's the focus of this particular exercise then, right? So the primary focus of the problem solution fit is to ensure that there is a clear understanding of the problem being solved and that the proposed solution is desirable to the target audience, right? So we are trying to find the problem over here, to articulate the problem over here. The entire focus is on knowing if that problem really exists, and that's the validation part of it. Right? So validation of the problem solution fitment involves direct interactions with potential users to gather feedback on the problem, right? And not only on the problem itself, so you go ahead and ask people, is this a problem that you face? You might, if you are creating a transportation solution, you might go and ask a few commuters, hey, you have a bus service available from point A to point B. Are you happy with it? Is there a problem? Because if a problem itself does not exist, if the consumers are perfectly happy with the service that they have, then creating an alternative solution may not may not resonate with the audience, right? So validation of the problem solution involves direct interactions with potential users to gather feedback on the problem, not only on the problem, but also the proposed solution. So go and ask the consumers, hey, if I were to offer a bike service from point A to point B, would you buy it? Would you pay for it, right? So you also check the solution. And this is often done through interviews, surveys, and early prototypes that we will discuss shortly. What is the outcome of this exercise expected to be? Well, the key outcome is a is a validated assumption. So you start off with an assumption or an hypothesis that maybe there is a problem of transportation for commuters traveling between point A to point B, right? And maybe that solution would be better addressed if we have an alternative mode of transportation. So that is your hypothesis and solution. What you are trying to do with the problem solution fitment exercise is to validate this assumption that there is a significant problem worth solving and that the proposed solution is both desirable, it is desired by the market and capable of addressing the problem effectively. So you're looking for two things. You're looking for desirability, you're looking for actually solving that problem. And how do you measure that? You measure that using indicators, right? Indicators like which is essentially going to be like some kind of a positive feedback from potential users, right? So it could be in the form of interest in the solution, people saying that, hey, I like your solution so much, I'm willing to make an advance deposit. Or I like your solution so much that I was thinking of buying a car, I'll not buy a car anymore, right? I will wait for your service to come into the market, right? So that is interest in the solution and also knowing that the problem really exists. So you're looking for evidence of demand for the solution among the target audience, right? And that is evidence. Because when you are doing the problem solution fitment, you are typically very, very early on in your entrepreneurial journey, or when you're thinking about an idea. This is something that you do as one of the first activities, even before you start developing a solution, right? Is to do a problem solution fitment and understand if there is a demand. Now, what you build, who is this for? And you need to be able to articulate that very well, right? Who is the solution for? And to do that, one of the main tools that you have is to be able to create what we call our customer personas. So who would be the ideal person who would buy your solution, right? You try to characterize that. It does not have to be a real person. It is a fictitious, it's a persona, so it's a fictitious character, right? But this character has all the attributes of your ideal customer, right? So, for example, if I wanted to sell a home automation solution, if I wanted to build an IoT application for home automation, and I said, okay, who is going to buy this, right? And here I have an example. I've given the person a name, right? So that the persona kind of feels real, right? So I've named that person Arvind. And then I'm saying that I'm trying to get some demographic information, some personal information about that individual. Age 42, male, married, has 2 children, lives in Bangalore, has a bachelor's degree in computer science. So this kind of tells me that this person is expected to have a relatively strong professional background. So as I can see from the professional background section, that is a senior software developer at a leading IT company. He has a lot of experience. He has a significant income. So there is a disposable income which the person may be able to leverage, or that is where auxiliary or discretionary spending can happen, right? Spending on something that is not a fundamental need, that is beyond just food, shelter kind of needs, right? It is a discretionary spending because the discretionary spending capability is there in this persona. I get to know what is the user environment. Why do I need the user environment? The user environment tells me that if I am trying to sell this person a home automation solution, which would require significant customization, which would require some configurations, right? So probably somebody who has a background in computer science may be willing to do that tinkering around, right? So they have to have the capability to tinker. It is not a solution that you would ask your electrician to come in and install. Plus, at the same time, the environment, there must be a space to automate, right? So unless the person is staying in a relatively large space which requires automation, right, the solution will not make sense. So I'm typically looking at somebody who's living in a 3-bedroom apartment in a gated community, is tech savvy, spends a lot of time with family and friends, tries to entertain their friends, right? So this home automation solution can become a toy for them, can become a source of convenience for this particular user, right? So once I identify, in most cases, what we do is, rather than coming up with the goals ourselves, we go and ask the target group what their goals would be. So that kind of gives us a sense of if these goals are validated or not, right? So when I'm creating this persona, I can go about it in either ways. I can either create a persona and state hypothesis, as in saying that my customer persona has this end goal of improving home security and monitoring for peace. So for peace of mind, I can start with this hypothesis and go and ask 20 people who fall within this personal background, user environment, and professional background if this is indeed their end goal. Or I could talk with 100 people, see what are the common end goals, and bring them into a common persona. So both sides are perfectly acceptable, perfectly all right. Because what is important in your when doing a problem solution fitment is to be able to identify your target market segments, right? So the first thing we do is, when we are thinking about a problem to solve, we understand that we cannot solve all the world's problems simultaneously, right? So there has to be an exercise in market segmentation. Who in the market will potentially buy my product, right? So already what you can see is I have created some segmentation. I have created a segmentation with experience, with a certain amount of disposable income, with a stable job profile, right? So I've already, all these parameters are helping me narrow down on that market segment of who is my ideal buyer. So the process of segmenting the market is based on these kind of demographic, psychographics, or geographic or behavioral factors, right? To identify distinct customer groups with unique needs and preferences, right? Because if this community is, if this community of users, say for example, is from Bangalore, right? They may have a different requirement from the solution versus if this group was maybe in a more spread out area, right? Maybe in rural, in the outskirts of Rajasthan, where houses can tend to be a lot bigger, right? So that segment may have a different set of preferences, but this segment may have different preferences. Unless I create that market segmentation, I will not be able to create a solution that exactly addresses the needs, the end goals of this type of customer segment. So once you have that segmentation, then you can do targeting. What is targeting? Targeting is act of selecting specific market segments to kind of focus your marketing efforts on. Once you have identified that a character like Arvind is your target group, then what you end up doing is you try to identify where do people like Arvind congregate. Do they read a common newspaper? Do they travel in the same routes, or do they stay in the same communities, right? Do they stay in the same gated communities? So depending on where these customer segments are, your marketing or your messaging efforts are directed towards that, right? For example, if you know that somebody like Arvind will stay in a gated community, right? You might want to conduct an event with the Resident Welfare Association of that particular community and say that, okay, I want to do an event and I want to showcase my solution, right? So that's how you target your solution towards a particular market segment, right? So the key thing here is, once you have identified all your target segments, you want to prioritize your marketing efforts and resources on the most promising customer group, right, with the highest potential for profitability. That is important, right? Otherwise, you will not get market fitment, as we will see later on. So, as I said, the persona development, you can develop the persona as a hypothesis and then try it out with a focus group, or you could talk to a focus group and derive the persona based on that, right? In either ways, once you create a persona, right, it is useful in many, many ways. It is useful for your product development team to identify the functionalities and features that you will put in your project or your product. It will help the sales team make very specialized, customized pitches to the target group. If you have a customer support team, right, they will know whom they are speaking with, and they will be able to customize their communication based on that, right? For example, if you were trying to sell, say, a Mercedes car to a target group, the customer support that you expect, the kind of communication that you expect may be very, very different than if you were trying to probably sell a scooter, right? So the persona helps the marketing teams create targeted communications. It helps the product teams develop targeted features. It helps the sales team create customized sales pitches, and it helps the customer support team answer the questions or follow up with the customer support effectively based on the persona that has been created. So it's a very, very important tool in our arsenal, right? So herein comes the part saying that, okay, I know that I have this particular target group, but how will I know what they are thinking about, right? How do I gather insights from that customer group? And there are well-known techniques for that, right? It's not like this is the first time that this is being done. This is a well-understood technique, right? First thing that you can do is market research, right? And when you are conducting thorough market research to understand market trends, consumer behavior, and competitor offerings, right? So, let me take an example of footwear, right? When you take the example of footwear, you will see that sometimes heels are in fashion, sometimes heels are out of fashion, and it's a cyclic market. So you need to understand, if you're working in the fashion industry, what is currently trending, right? That's what market research tells you. If there is generally what you'll find, if there is some kind of an athletic event going on, right, Olympics or something like that, people will suddenly become very health conscious, and you will find that the sales of processed foods may actually go down, and people may start preferring organic foods, right? So these are cyclicities that happen in the market, but these cyclicities are kind of hidden from view until you go to the market and ask them, right? So gathering, in order to gather customer insights, market research is probably one of the first things that you will try, right? You could also try out other ways. If you know where your target segment is, you could create a survey or a questionnaire and ask people, right? You could ask them on LinkedIn, you could email them a bunch of questionnaires, you could ask for feedback, right? You could call them up and ask them a bunch of questions. So collecting data directly from target customers through surveys and questionnaires help you gain insights into their preferences or pain points or buying behavior, right? You can also invite them into a focus group, right? In a focus group, ideally, you would want to have a heterogeneous mix of customers, right? Some people who will absolutely love your product or your solution, some people who will absolutely hate your product, right? Because the more contradictory opinions you hear, the more insights you will gain about where that middle path is, right? Are you trying to build a product that will polarize your market and you will sell it to only one very small and niche segment? Or are you trying to create a more mass appeal within your product itself? And doing this kind of focus group studies very, very early on helps you save a lot of effort and a lot of money from having to launch a particular feature and then having to recall it or redo it all over again, right? So focus groups and interviews is the third tool that we have. Finally, there's something called observational studies, right? And observational studies are, unlike interviews or focus groups where there is a moderator who's asking questions and you're looking for some answers, or surveys and questionnaires where you are essentially asking questions such that it may prompt, there may be a bias in the survey. So you may inadvertently create a bias within the response itself, right? Observational studies focus on observing customers in their natural environment, right? You let them do whatever they're doing, and just, if you wanted to videotape them or do something like that, with their permission, of course, but you observe them in their natural environment to gain first-hand insights into their behaviors, preferences, and pain points. I'll give you an example of observational studies in one of my previous organizations. We were building a lot of medical healthcare devices, diagnostic quality, or even OT, operational theater quality devices, right? And in many cases, what we had to do was we actually went into the operation theater and we sat there trying to see how would the doctor, when they're operating on a particular patient, use that particular device, right? When we are designing the solution, it may seem that, there is a particular usage, that it is very natural that the doctor will hold this device in a particular way. But when you actually go into the OT, you find out that when doing that particular procedure, the doctor's hands are already occupied. They're already holding on to something else. So they may need an alternative way to operate this particular device, right? Those are insights that you will not get until you observe the user using that solution, or kind of going about their things in their natural environment, right? And that's why observational studies gives us a completely different perspective of how the market tends to use a particular solution, right? Everybody with me so far? So once you collect all this information, right? Why are you collecting this information? You are collecting this information because you want to identify what the customer pain points are, right? So once you have this information, you want to do a pain point analysis, right? And in pain point analysis, what you are doing is you are identifying and prioritizing the most significant challenges or problems faced. So there, let me go back to my example of Arvind and the home automation solution, right? If you observe Arvind in their homes, doing their whatever they are doing, right? You really have to ask, what is the pain point, right? Is it that Arvind has an office in his house, and the office is on the other end of the house? So whenever he's in a meeting or something, or he's alone at home, he's working, and somebody comes at the door, it is very difficult for him to quickly come out and open the door. That is why he needs a home automation solution, right? So, or maybe when Arvind is working, the maid comes in and the maid needs to be let in, right? Maybe that is the most significant challenge. Whatever it is, until you actually do an observational study or a focus group study, you will not be able to do the pain point analysis. And in the pain point analysis, you try to prioritize which one is the most significant challenge. There could be 10 different challenges, but if you can solve the top challenge or the top pain point, then the rate of adoption of that product essentially goes up, right? So you can do pain point analysis. You can do customer feedback analysis, right? Which is essentially analyzing feedback from customer interactions. And customer interactions means people you have actually sold the product to, right? Now, one thing I forgot to mention earlier on is this kind of problem solution fitment, it is not a one-off thing. Although you start off the problem solution fitment very, very early on in your entrepreneurial journey, it is an iterative process. It is a continuous process because the market dynamics change over time, right? So analyzing feedback from customers, right? That gives you a wealth of information. Did they like the product? Did they like the packaging? Was it Was it useful to them? Were they able to reuse the packaging somewhere else? Did they feel that the portion that was given was too little? Did they feel that they had a storage issue with that? Right? Did they feel issues with getting support for that particular product? Right. So this is where you get a lot of customer feedback, and a lot of marketing dollars actually go towards understanding customer feedback. Right. A lot of data science projects are, originate with large companies trying to understand customer feedback.
மேடம் ஆனா நடராஜன் அப்படி இவ்வளவு பேசக்கூடாது மேடம், போயிட்டு மட்டும் பேசிக்குவோம்.
Thank you. So the third thing is probably what is called empathy mapping. Right. So instead of asking that why did the customer not do something the way it was meant to be on the instruction manual, and very rarely will customers follow your instructional guidelines. Right. It is the instruction manual that you are supplying is people are going to use that only when something gets broken, just anecdotally. But if you can put yourself in the shoes of the customer themselves, right, and try to see why would you be using your product. Right? If you start asking yourself those questions and start creating what are called empathy maps to visualize and understand the emotions, thoughts, and behavior of target customers, it may help you identify the underlying pain point and unmet needs. Right? So going back to the first example I started off with, saying that I wanted to create an alternative transportation solution from point A to point B. If I put myself in the shoes of the customer and say that, hey, yeah, I have a way to go from point A to point B, but this alternative, cab service or bike sharing service or whatever it is a little bit more expensive. So is it really worth saving 10 minutes versus paying 50 rupees more? If you put yourself in the shoes of the customer, you start asking this kind of question. And that is where the empathy mapping comes in from, right? To that particular customer, what was more important? If you were the customer, right? As a seller, for you, it is very clear that the customer should be taking your solution. But when you put yourself in the customer's shoes, suddenly you feel, why should I take this solution? I have another option. What if I can get a ride from somebody else instead of this particular service? Or what if if we are taking a cab, can 3 or 4 of us from the same building come together and share the bill, right? So this is what the customer may be thinking in terms of what are the options available to them, and therefore their choice depends on the options that are available to them, which you may or may not be aware of. Right. Doing so, we also do something called journey mapping. What are the exact steps that they did? Right. Mapping out the customer journey to identify pain points and what are called friction points at each stage of the customer experience, from awareness to consideration to purchase and post-purchase support. And this roadmap that I laid out, if you think about a customer buying your solution, why did they buy your product? Is your product so unique that they brought your product because of the novelty, or did they buy it for the utility? Right? How did they become aware that you sell that product? Did they become aware from your website? Did they become aware from a review website? Did they become aware from a friend or somebody else who is using that particular solution? So where did that awareness come from? How did they start considering your product? When they saw your product, did they go and start comparing your product with 5 other products to figure out if you were the cheapest, if you were the most premium, if your service quality is going to be better than others? What was it that made them buy your product? Right? Then again, how seamless was the buying experience? Right? Did they just go about and were they directed into some website from where they had to make a payment, and then they were directed to another website where they had to put in their delivery address, then they were directed to another website where they had to fill in some coupons, and then they were directed to another website? Was it a long journey, or was the purchase experience seamless for them, as well as the post-purchase support? These are things that matter, right? So you have to give considerable time and effort to collect the market feedback and understand the journey mapping from that feedback. So once you have the feedback, as I showed, there are multiple ways of getting that the feedback about the problem and the solution. That is helping you understand the pain points, the feedback analysis, the empathy mapping, the journey mapping, and it helps create that differentiation, that small thing, the small change, which is going to significantly bump up your sales, right? That's what we are really after, because that's where the problem solution fitment is very, very important, right? Because achieving problem solution fitment validates the existence of a genuine need or demand for the product or service within the target market. So it is confirming that the problem being addressed is significant enough to motivate potential users to seek out and adopt the solution. That is important, right? The second thing you have to, why this problem solution fitment is important is because of the customer centricity, right? Understanding and achieving this problem solution fit, it requires deep insights into the target customers, their needs, their preferences, and their behaviors, right? So if you look at Amazon, which claims itself to be the world's most customer-centric company, right? If you take that as a core tenet of your product development, right, where the solutions are tailored to address specific pain points, it delivers meaningful value to users because you have designed the product, the services, and everything keeping the customer in mind, right? And when you do that, when you have taken their empathy, their feedback into account, which means that you have already built in those processes in as part of your product, right? Which makes it easy for anybody who's coming and using your solution for the first time. It makes them feel that your product cares about them, right? And if you can make your customer feel that you care about them, then they will be loyal to you. And in doing so, they reduce the risk, right? So validating the problem solution fitment early in the product development process helps mitigate the risk of building a product that fails to gain traction once it is launched in the market. So by taking care that your solution aligns closely with the customer needs, right, you can minimize the likelihood of potentially investing your time and resources into developing a product that ultimately misses its mark. What else? What other advantage do you get? You get a competitive advantage, because if you build your product which is customer centric, which takes the customer's feedback into account before you build it, right, they are better positioned to differentiate themselves in the marketplace, right? So by addressing these unmet needs or offering superior solutions compared to existing alternatives, you can gain a competitive advantage and attract a loyal customer base. And I think I was referring to this point earlier on, where improvement is iterative. It is not a one-off process. You continue to iterate. So feedback from early adopters and users can inform further refinement of the product, leading to enhancements that strengthen its value proposition. I'll define these words, value propositions and all, as we go along, right? And over time, what happens is that it increases its market appeal over time, right? So the first generation of users, they inform you about how to improve the product, and the second generation comes out. The second generation of users, they inform you how to what other changes to be made? Should the price be reduced, right? Should the quality be improved? Should there be a large button that needs to be pressed? Should it be Wi-Fi enabled or IoT enabled, right? So these are all iterative improvement plans that come about. One more thing that I'll bring up over here, and I would strongly recommend for those of you who are interested to go in and read this book by Eric Ries called Lean Startup. There is an entire lean startup methodology, which means that when you are doing that problem solution fitment, right, the idea of using a lean methodology here is to essentially advocate for rapid experimentation, right? You want to understand the problem as soon as possible, and it is okay if you fail. So it's a fast fail model. It is a rapid experimentation model, right? It's an iterative development model, and what is called validated learning, which means once you do something, you quickly ask people if this is okay. Use that success to build further, right? So this iterative process of building what we call is a minimum viable product, measuring its performance in the market through experiments and feedback. And you build this, you have this build, measure, learn cycle, right? That keeps on continuing. So in doing so, you will incorporate certain areas of what is called hypothesis testing. What you think will work, okay, build it in, or ask people if you provided a new feature in your solution, would it make it more attractive? That's how you do a hypothesis testing, right? If it is not what the market wants, you pivot and give them an A/B test. Okay, if not this, then what if instead of feature A, if I replace it with feature B, right? How many people would go for feature A? How many people would go for feature B? If there are more people who are inclined towards feature B, build feature B. That is where you are pivoting, right? And you are iterating continuously based on customer feedback, right? And that is what refines the product. The more refined the product is, the higher the entry barrier for others, for competitors to come in and take over your market. So in doing so, first of all, we start with a lean startup methodology, which means that it is okay if I have my startup based out of a garage. As long as I have a marketing team, as long as my marketing team is looking out for organic growth, in the initial stages, I do not need to outsource my entire marketing to a large marketing company. Right? Lean startup means staying within your resources, doing the best you can with your resources, and changing very, very fast, changing very, very rapidly, right? Until you get to a point where you have established a market product fitment. That will come to in a little bit. But in doing so, what you are creating is your minimum viable product. So your minimum viable product is the simplest version of your product that will allow you to test your hypothesis and gather feedback from real users with, this is important, with minimal resources. You are not going out, you're not doing the whole hog, you're not building out the entire solution, right? So the importance of building that MVP is to validate your assumptions rather than having a full-fleshed out product. So in many cases, when you are building your MVP, you may use accelerated prototyping tools like 3D printing and so on, rather than building molds on day one itself, right? If you build molds and the market does not like it, then you would have spent a lot of money, and the product may not be able to, may not get hit in the market, right? So you mitigate that by looking at what are faster ways of building that minimum viable solution, right? Say, for example, for those of you who are in Bangalore, when Ola launched bikes, right? It was a new service. It was a new service. They had not launched it across all over the country, but they launched Ola bikes because they felt that it was a product which would offer, transportation service at a much lower price point. But then it ran into a lot of regulatory issues. Eventually, they figured out, both the government and the and the operators, they came to some middle ground. They figured that these are the legislative challenges that had to be ironed out before that service could be launched on a much bigger, better scale, and it became a solution that would be making money for them, right? So that's how you build your solutions, right? And always keep in mind that when you are building these minimum viable products, right, as I mentioned, you need to have this build, measure, learn cycle. But what is it that you will measure? So there has to be a very conscious effort in terms of designing and conducting experiments with well-defined metrics and key performance indicators. Until you have a metric that you are measuring, it cannot be an arbitrary measurement. So you are going to decide your success criteria, your acceptance criteria of these key performance indicators before you start the experiment, so that you know when do you consider your experiment as being successful, when do you consider your hypothesis to be tested versus when do you consider it to be have failed, right? And you can do this experimentation also iteratively. So hopefully this gives you a decent perspective of what problem solution fitments are, right? Now I'll move on to try and explain what a market, what a product market fitment may be like, right? So let me give you another example over here, and the example that I have for you is that you are a chef preparing a new dish in your restaurant, right? So your goal is to create a meal that is not only the most delicious one, but it satisfies the cravings of your customer. Because as any other entrepreneur, you want to give the best to your customer. Now to do that, you need to understand their tastes and preferences. So think of the market as a group of hungry diners with different tastes and appetites. Each diner represents a potential customer segment with their unique preferences and needs. So your job as a chef is to create a dish that will appeal to the majority of these diners. So let's say you come up with a new recipe for a gourmet hamburger, right? With like truffle infused sauce and some artisanal toppings and things like that, right? It's a very fancy thing. So this is your product, the dish that you have created to meet the needs of these hungry diners. But just because you think that it is delicious doesn't mean it will automatically be a hit with your customers. So product market fit is like serving your gourmet hamburger, the best product that you could create, to your diners and seeing how they react. If they take one bite and immediately they rave about it with like how amazing it tastes, then you have hit the mark. Another example I can think of is any other Hollywood or Bollywood movie, right? Every actor who's made a movie, they've made it with their entire heart. They gave it the best effort. But until the product hits the box office, you don't know whether it is a hit or a miss. So your product may perfectly fit the market appetite, and if your product fits the market appetite, then customers are going to line up to order more. However, if your diners take a bite and they kind of seem indifferent or even turn their noses up at the dish, and then you haven't quite found the right fit. So maybe they prefer something simpler or healthier, or perhaps they're looking for a completely different type of cuisine. You don't know, right? So product market fit is about finding that sweet spot where your product aligns perfectly with what the market wants and needs, right? So it's like creating a dish that becomes an instant hit with your diners and keeps them coming back for more and turning them into loyal customers. So in entrepreneurship, or if I want to define this more formally, then product market fit is a concept in entrepreneurship and business strategy that refers to the degree of alignment between a company's product or services and the demands and the needs of the target segment. So what it is telling you essentially, or what it is essentially signifying, is whether a product or service effectively addresses a market need and it resonates with customers. leading to strong adoption, satisfaction, and loyalty. Where this is different from the problem solution fit is, problem solution fit, you could not really quantify it. You were finding out if a problem exists, if customers were willing to try out your solution, if they felt that the solution was viable, right? In a product market fit, you are looking for that resonance, right? Not only is it a solution to the problem, but it is a solution to a vast majority of the customers. And because otherwise you will not get the scalability, will not get the strong adoption that you are looking for, right? So that is where it becomes different. So if I look at the focus validation and validation of product market fitment, the focus has shifted to scaling and scaling distribution and marketing strategies that will grow the product's user base and market share. So it's not just about the product solving a problem, but being the right fit for a large enough market to ensure commercial success, right? So product market fitment actually comes a little bit after the initial problem solution fitment, right? So in order to do the validation, you use measures like user engagement, user retention, or other growth metrics, right? So you use tools like A/B testing or cohort analysis. We do something called NPS score. These are metrics that you will use to understand if your product is very close to hitting the mark, it is hitting the mark, or it has completely missed the mark, right? The outcome that you are expecting, the outcome is a product that is not only wanted by the market, but also capable of capturing and retaining a significant user base, leading to sustained growth and revenue. That's the outcome you want from a product market fitment. What are the indicators? The indicators are high user engagement, right? Low churn rates, people not moving into other products or not buying your competitor products, right? There is organic growth through word of mouth. So people are talking about your product, right? So even without you pumping in a lot of money into various kinds of marketing channels, right? People genuinely like your product. It comes up as a conversational topic, right? Say, for example, Tesla cars, right? Tesla does not really spend a whole lot of marketing because they believe in a very different organic marketing strategy, where if somebody buys a Tesla car, they would be they're expected to be so proud about it that they will show up and automatically market it on behalf of Tesla, right? So that's their strategy, right? And you're looking for that positive market feedback. So what's the importance of product market fitment? Now, like in the case of problem solution fitment, it helps you to get a lot of market validation. So that is definitely important, right? It also gives you now customer satisfaction and loyalty, right? So products that achieve this fitment are more likely to resonate with customers. And this in turn leads to increased loyalty and increased levels of satisfaction. And satisfied customers are more inclined to become repeat purchasers, or they are inclined to recommend your product or service to others and contribute to positive word of mouth marketing, right? Now, this is where product market fitment has a different importance, because product market fitment is important for revenue generation. Not only is your product useful in the market, you need to, you have spent your time and effort building this particular solution because you wanted to generate revenue, right? So product market fitment is very, very closely tied to the revenue generation and profitability. A product or service that effectively addresses the market needs and delivers value to the customers is better positioned to attract paying customers and drive sales growth, right? The other thing that can happen is, if your product is really good, then customers are, satisfied customers may be willing to pay a premium for products or services that is meeting their needs, right? So you may be able to create premium segmentation in your offerings as well, right? Of course, a good product market fitment gives you that competitive advantage. And finally, you have the scalability and the growth part of it, right? Because the reason you are doing this product market fitment is for the scalability and growth, right? Companies, right, expanding their customer base, that in turn reduces their input cost. They're able to have better deals on the input costs, right, which helps them control the price at which they are able to offer their services to the end customers, right? So generally, for a company that knows that it has this market fitment, right, it represents a key milestone in the journey of a startup or business. How will you know that there is market demand? If you want to do a market fitment, ideally if there is a product market fitment, you will do well. But how do you know that there is demand? And there are a few ways about it, right? Just like you could get, we talked about a few things like doing focus groups, like doing observational studies. So broadly, they come under the umbrella of what we call qualitative research, right? And qualitative research methods such as interviews or focus groups or observational studies, they are important. They give you a perspective in terms of customer needs, pain points, and motivation. But the other approach that we use when we get into assessing the market demand is more quantitative research. And quantitative research is done much more systematically. It involves actual foot on the ground. You send people to various districts, various markets, do your questionnaire, do your surveys, gather a lot of data that can be processed. And you see the emerging trends, the regressions or the projections that come out of that kind of data sets, right? So the third area is in terms of market analysis, where you can buy market reports saying, what is the size of the market, what is the growth potential. So you can either do that yourself, or you have companies like, say, Gartner or Forrester, which can do customized reports, or they sell market analysis and market reports, right? So it helps you to get into the market knowing what you are after, right? So that is important. It gives you that strategic perspective to make decisions based on where you are most likely to get product market fitments, right? While doing so, you may also want to do some competitive analysis, right? And there are several frameworks that are available, because when you are launching your product, you may want to do something like a simple SWOT analysis, which will help you understand what are the things that your organization has, right? If you are going about trying to, say, for example, you are a computer science student, and you want to launch a website for, say, travel and booking, right? Why are you uniquely qualified to address that business? I would argue that, if you are a computer engineer, your strengths or what you have acquired or what you really know is algorithms and things like that. So if your venture is based on what you know best, then the chances of that succeeding is a lot more, right? Versus if you were to take on a business which is more operationally heavy, then somebody who understands the travel business better may have an edge over you, right? So you need to understand what are your strengths and weaknesses versus what happens if there are changes in the law, right? Say, for example, you want to launch a travel business and the government brings out a law saying that all travel records have to be put up on a blockchain system, right? As a computer science student, you might be better positioned to take advantage of this change in legislation and implement it in your system. So external factors can also change the market dynamics significantly, and this is where your opportunities and threats really come into the picture, right? There are other competitive analysis frameworks that are available. There is something called Porter's 5-force analysis, which analyzes the competitive forces within the industry, right? So it kind of looks at the threat of new entrants. It looks at the bargaining power of buyers and suppliers, and the threats of substitutes, and also what is called competitive rivalry, right? So how does the market allow you to survive, right? How does it allow you to control your pricing? Does it really allow you to monetize your investments to its full potential, or is there a probability that that the competition will catch up really, really quickly, right? So in doing so, you can not only do that, you can, if you are starting out a company, you can as well as just go to a portal like, say, Upwork and, outsource a project on competitor benchmarking, right? I am going to sell this product. Who are the other players who are selling this particular product in this geography or for this target segment? What are their pricings? What are their bundles looking like? How have they packaged their solutions, right? What are their key messaging that they are doing to their customers, right? How can I be different from that? So that's what you do in terms of competitive benchmarking, right? So why are you doing this? So that you can build in the features which are most aligned to the market and most strongly aligning to your strengths as an entrepreneur, to your resources as an entrepreneur, right? When this alignment happens, you are able to quickly turn things around and deliver the best value to your customers, right? Let me take an example of, say, a water bottle, right? It's a very simple example, and if you go on Amazon, you will find, say, for example, a stainless steel half-liter or 700 milliliter water bottle, right? And if you look into the feature space, right, what are the options that you will get? You will get a bunch of different options, from dishwasher safe to bottle material to bottle shape, which means that it's the same water bottle, but you see that there are so many differentiators that are available, right? Similarly, if you look at the price space, right, there are water bottles under 500 rupees, there are water bottles over 3,000 rupees, right? So you have a wide range of solutions that are available in that segment as well. If you look at the process space, right, you have companies which are selling water bottles which say, with some added features, which say what is your hydration level, which is, IoT connected. So it tells you how much water you drank throughout your day, right? So it's moving from saying that this is a storage container or a container for water bottle to saying that we are selling you the motivation to stay hydrated, right? You can give additional benefits, like there is ionization or there is filtration that is happening with the water bottle itself. So even if you look at a category like water bottles, which is a very, very simple category, you find that there are a number of different products that are available. So you, as an entrepreneur, when you are going about and building a new product, right, that competitive analysis becomes extremely important, because that is what tells you where your innovation should lie. Whether your innovation should be in terms of introducing a new feature, which is called a product innovation, or you are going to position it differently. You are going to offer a premium product at a middle or mid-level segment, or you're going to do it vice versa, or it's going to be a process innovation, right? How you are going about doing it. For example, Amazon, right? Amazon, when it introduces e-shopping, when it introduced online shopping, that's a process innovation as opposed to somebody going to a supermarket and buying something. Or it could be a complete new paradigm that you are bringing in, a new way of doing things completely, right? In all of these areas, your innovation is not captured in one particular box. Your innovation space actually kind of spreads across all of them. And this innovation space has to essentially translate into what you communicate to your customers. You have to tell your customers that customer will not know about you. You have to tell your customer what is the value proposition that you are bringing in. You are responsible for letting your customers know that, hey, I have built a product for solving your needs, and this is why my product is different from others, right? You have to map your value proposition to the customer's profile. You do this by, first of all, let me say, what is a value proposition? I mentioned I'll discuss this. So when I talk about value proposition, it is the unique value that a product or a service offers to its target customers, so that it solves their problems or it fulfills their desires better than alternative solutions. Now that is very important, the last part, that it has to be better than alternative solutions. Better can be defined in different ways. Better is not necessarily always in terms of money. Better can be in terms of experience. Better can be in terms of time. Better can be, so that is why it is called value proposition, because what is it that is better than what was happening before? That's where the value is getting unlocked. And we use this, what is called a value as a tool for kind of designing and visualizing the value proposition, right? So where we try and map what is it that the customer wanted to get done, and how is your product or service achieving that? In the process, what is it that they're gaining? Which gains have been amplified, or which pains have been relieved, right? So how are you creating new gains for them, and how are you elevating the pains that they have? This is how you create a value proposition. Once you create a value proposition, remember, a value proposition is for a particular customer segment, right? You can have, your product could have different value proposition for different customer segments. Originally when we discussed customer personas, we talked about customer segmentation. Having a customer segmentation, we discussed that it allows you to have tailored messaging for each of those customer segments. We are running a little low on time, but we'll cover a few more slides. Once you have your targeted messaging, it allows you to now position your product to that market in a different way, right? So positioning is the perception of a product or brand in the minds of the target customers, right? And this positioning is always kind of relative to the competitors, and it's based on key attributes, benefits, and other associations that they might have. Why do you like Pepsi more than Coke or Thumbs Up? Right? That is a positioning that has been done. Every time a soft drink is being advertised, it is advertising something different to you than the others. Right? Not saying that we are also another soft drink company. Differentiation is very, very important, because differentiation in positioning is where you will emphasize on what are the unique features, benefits, or we sometimes call it FAB, or feature benefit analysis, the unique features or benefits or attributes that set your product apart from competitors and create value for them, right? Based on this differentiation, your branding and messaging comes about. Your branding and messaging contributes to the positioning by shaping perceptions and, because it is communicating values, right? It is creating that emotional connection with the target customers, right? So you have to be able to shape perceptions, and often marketing campaigns or branding campaigns have run where, they have changed entire cultures. They have gone ahead and changed a very fundamental attributes of even our mythology, right? For example, when Coca-Cola came up with Santa Claus-based ads, right? In fact, for those of you who are not aware, Coca-Cola, Santa Claus coming, looking like this, pot-bellied person, elderly person with a ho-ho and a white beard. This is a marketing gimmick. This character was created by Coca-Cola, and it is a character that has become, embedded in our culture now, right? Similarly, if you look at a company called De Beers, right? De Beers is one of the largest diamond mining companies, and it was not able to sell diamonds. So it came up with this whole line of ads saying a diamond is forever, and started associating, marriages and the scientific, measuring your love with the carat size of the diamond, right? So this was a marketing gimmick. It's created a perception that in the US, unless there is a wedding ring, unless there is a diamond wedding ring, it is not an engagement ring. Right? That was never the case, but it was a marketing gimmick by De Beers, who even this is what 70, 80 years later on, it still goes with that same. Tagline, right? Diamond is forever, or right now in India we see the forever mark, right? The forever mark says the diamond is forever. So this kind of sales, right? Today, incidentally, is Valentine's Day, right? Valentine's Day is again, it was not a very largely celebrated day for that matter. Yet, a lot of retailers took advantage of this, starting off with Hallmark, who wanted wanted to create a new day to be able to celebrate its cards, to be able to sell more cards, right? And you created a whole line of communication of messaging, connecting an emotion of love to various kinds of products, right? So right from cars, Volkswagen trying to sell its Beetle cars to chocolates to green peas, whatnot, right? This is propagated. If you look at something like a Black Friday, a Cyber Monday, a Big Billion Day, or Prime Day, these are all examples of essentially fictitious days being created to be able to push sales, to be able to create a connection with the users, and using that to sell more product, right? For example, with a Black Friday, you know that it is going to be a day of mass discount. So a lot of discounting happens on Black Friday, and that is how things are structured. A lot of retail marketing is targeted around that, right? And you have to understand that when you are building a product, I mentioned that it is a quantitative game as well. You will find that large organizations, they will have very, very specific category-based data, very fine-grained data about which category is doing well, which category is not doing well, why did it not do well, right? So this kind of metrics are essentially what is used to build on and expand on a particular product, right? So this is what is called feedback loops. Once you have this data, you can create a feedback loop in product development. You can bring in the customer feedback. You can do a lot of data analytics on top of it. And apart from that, you can also get a lot of internal feedback from your own users, right? From your own internal stakeholders, such as employees, partners, or advisors, to gain a very diverse perspective and insights into the strengths and weaknesses of your product, right? Because these quantitative measures, right, unless they're quantifiable, you will not know whether you are slipping on them or whether they are doing well. And you will find a lot of measures with your product. When you are doing the market, especially when you are doing the product market fitment, you will come across words like, say, customer acquisition cost. How much marketing spend did you do versus how many customers you got out of it? That's your average customer acquisition cost. If you get a customer, what is the customer lifetime value? How much do they spend in buying your product or your product line over whatever duration that they are spending? What is the dwell time within your for your products, right? What is the churn rate? How quickly are they being taken? Once you have created a customer, you have sold a service or a product to a customer. The customer now is habituated towards using that service, and then they find a cheaper alternative and migrate there, right? So what is the churn rate that you are observing? So these are just a few of the examples. There are almost a few hundred ways you can dissect, depending on what is it that is important to your business, right? Because this metrics, they kind of give you very actionable insights, because it tells you what is going well, what is not going well, and this gives you essentially the ability to make data-driven decisions, prioritizing initiatives that drive growth and improve customer satisfaction, right? One last thing I wanted to touch upon before I close today's session. Why you think that a product will do well, right? Typically, what ends up happening, we have seen this kind of adoption curve of products in the market, where when you are building a product, initially when you are thinking about a product, you are doing a problem solution fit, you are probably over here. You will have your MVP out, and you will have, try it out with a few innovators, and they will likely use the beta version of your product. then it will get adopted by a few visionaries. But you will not see product market fit until you are having a majority of the market, right? This is where the markets, you really see resonance in the market. But a very, very large number of companies and startups, their products, they die in between. This, you know, jumping from being over, you know, in the visionary segment to jumping over from your product being bought by just the visionaries to the pragmatists, right? That is a big leap. So this chasm is a critical stage in the adoption life cycle of a product, right? Where products face a significant barrier when transitioning from this early adopters to the mainstream market acceptance. This graph, by the way, or this chart is commonly known as Moore's technology adoption lifecycle model, which was created by Geoffrey Moore, right? And it essentially, what it does is it identifies distinct customer segments in terms of innovators or those who are the early adopters or the early majority, then it has the late majority, then you have the laggards, people who will buy because they have no other option other than buying, right? These are the people who are also the investors, they have faith in you. Right? So these early adopters are essentially characterized by their willingness to take risks and try out a new technology, right? Or a product ahead of the mainstream market. And these visionary, you have to understand why did they buy your product? Right? They brought your product because they saw the advantage of your product, or they wanted a competitive advantage in their product lines, right? So this is where decision makers are willing to invest in innovative solutions in order to gain a competitive or a strategic advantage. So you know that these people are in your favor. Because they are in your favor, if you can leverage their feedback, their advocacy, or their success stories to build credibility and momentum, that gives you an effective strategy to cross this chasm, right? So there are several ways to kind of cross this, and you could target niche market, for example, right? You could recommend, you could essentially market your products into verticals where its value is more clearly understood, right? For example, we at Capsule Labs, right? We are a knowledge producing organization, and as a knowledge producing organization, we create knowledge, right? Now, for us to be able to create, if we were to do a Python training program, right? It's already available in the market. It is a mass market product, right? We will not be unlocking a lot of value there. And therefore, as a decision itself, we will not be targeting that market. We should be looking at things, probably teaching a particular library within Python to faculty members, right? So that is where we are targeting a niche market. That could be one way of crossing the chasm, right? Or it could be a more practically positioned, right? Or more pragmatic positioning, the way we call it, right? Where we look at well-established models and try to go about those methods, right? If, say, for example, if I am looking for, a driver on rent, a driver for a short-term gig, typically I will go to a local center, or I will go to a local, and most of these local places would advertise their services by giving me, by giving out leaflets, right? So if there is a well-established way of going to the mainstream, then we may have to approach them accordingly. If you look at Byju's, right? Byju's, in order to go mainstream, what did they do? They went and started to sponsor the Indian cricket team, right? So that's a guaranteed way to reach a very large audience across the country, right? And also demonstrate, stability in their organization. So this is called a pragmatic positioning mechanism. And if you have good success stories, nothing sells like good success stories, right? That's the approach that somebody like a Tesla would do, right? In achieving these go-to-market strategies, right? Which positioning are you going to take? it is important that you be as agile as possible. You are a startup, you are a young organization. You can make changes to your policies, to your internal processes almost overnight, which is why you should start thinking along, taking that agility, making that agility your advantage, rather than a very large organization that has to go through several process changes to be able to implement simple things, right? So you have to focus on agile principles in terms of an iterative product development life cycle. Make small changes and keep bringing out newer and newer versions. Right? So that's one way of doing iterative development. You could have a Scrum framework where you set up a sprint cycle and very quickly make those changes. Add a new features in a particular sprint. Go to market. Right. You need to be focusing on a lot more of the lean practices, how to minimize your cost, reduce dependencies within the organization, right, and essentially work on a very structured, very polished way, right. Other methods like Lean Six Sigma, I'm not going to get into that. But I think around this time, I will try to conclude in terms of what I discussed with respect to problem solution fitment and product market fitment, right? So what are the differences if we can, if we want to recollect, right? The first thing that we observed is that there is a difference in terms of the stage of development. Problem solution fitment is about proving the need for and the efficacy of a solution. And therefore, it is typically done at an early stage of development. Whereas product market fitment is about proving that the product can capture and sustain a market. So it is a later stage exercise that follows the achievement of problem solution fitment. Right? So that is different. The next thing that is different is the scope of the focus. Whereas the problem solution fitment is very narrowly focused on the problem and the immediate users, product market fitment takes a much broader view that kind of encompasses the market dynamics, the competition, the scalability, all of those factors. So it's a more holistic view of how you're going to make money from your product, right? The third thing is the approach to validation. So for problem solution fitment, a lot of the validation is qualitative, right? It relies on feedback and direct interactions with users. Whereas for product market fitment, it is more quantitative. It uses metrics, well-defined metrics to prove whether the market is accepting your product or not, right? Overall, the relationship, so the journey from idea to a successful product, it involves both of these things. So it will involve first achieving a problem solution fitment, because if there is no problem to solve, then your solution will not fly. And the second thing is how does that product, how is that adopted, right? And so you have to ensure that there is a viable solution to a real problem, and you follow that up by achieving the product market fitment, where the solution finds its place within the broader market context, right? I'm not going to get into details of markets today in terms of monopolistic markets or oligopolistic markets, right? That is a different ball game altogether. But for today's discussion, it suffices to say that successfully navigating both stages is crucial to your product being successful, right? If you are not able, if you're unable to do that, your product will not be viable in the long term. So that said, I will recommend a few books that you may want to read if you're interested. Of course, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, a very good read in terms of how to keep your reduce your expenses and how to focus on iteratively building the minimum viable product. There is this very nice book by Jeffrey Moore, which is called Crossing the Chasm. And I already kind of gave you an overview of what this chasm is, but if you want details, you are more than welcome to read it in more detail, right? There is another book which is called Value Proposition Design by Alexander Osterwalder, which introduces the value proposition canvas, right? And this is something which allows you to do a lot more reflection of, how your product is going to get into the market. And finally, I will recommend this book by Clayton Christensen, which is called The Innovator's Dilemma, and where he kind of looks at how successfully companies often fail to innovate, and they fail to adopt disruptive new technologies, like companies like Kodak, for example, right, which did not see that the evolution of digital cameras coming in and effectively went out of market, right? So that said, I will conclude my discussion. I think we are almost, we are past time, but if there are a couple of questions, I might be able to take it.
Dear participants, kindly post your questions in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
I hope the talk was useful. I brought in a lot of concepts today, right? Many of you may be already aware of a number of these concepts, right? So it may be a little overwhelming, but if you have questions, if you wanted clarification, maybe I can help you with some of that.
Dear participants, kindly post your questions in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Sir, I have one question. Shall I ask, sir?
Yes, sir.
Some of the staff.
I'm sorry, I did not get your question.
They don't have some knowledge. Some of the startups, they don't have some knowledge on the product market fit. So how, what is your idea, or what is your suggestion to get into the product market fit? Is there maybe a kind of survey or anything, or they may be a platform, or they can use some kind of platforms to use, or what kind of suggestions you can possibly give it to the startups, young startups?
So it's a very broad question, but I'll take a stab at it, right? First of all, if a company is if you have a startup that you are incubating, right, most likely they will have a website, right? Now, if they have a website, can they quickly integrate, say, Microsoft Clarity or Google Analytics onto their website? See what people are coming and doing on their website. How many people are actually scrolling down and reading the whole material? Or how many people are just coming in, looking here and there and just going away? Which is a proxy for saying that people may not be interested, or what you are communicating on the website is not aligning with what the customer came there to see, right? Or maybe the right kind of customer did not come to see. When we built our first website for Capsule Labs, right, there was a lot of people who were coming and visiting, right? But we were not getting enough traction. So when we started implementing Clarity, right, what we saw was people came and we were expecting a lot of students to come in and buy courses. Instead, what we discovered was the students were coming and they were getting very excited, but then their parents were coming and visiting. Once their parents started coming and visiting, they were looking for a lot of government symbols. They were looking for accreditation, right? They were trying to essentially, as any parent would do, they're trying to validate whether this is credible or not, right? So that gave us that insight that maybe our messaging should not be targeted solely for the student, but it should be targeted towards those who are the decision makers, right? So that's how you get a sense of whether your product is resonating in the market or not, right? In general, if I ask somebody, if I'm making a toffee and I ask somebody, would you like a toffee? Nobody will say no. Everybody will say, yes, I want your toffee. But then when I tell them that, will you buy my toffee? Then they may be very, very hesitant in buying it. So unless you test market acceptance with payments, right? When you are giving away a sample for free, it will generate a very different reaction from the market versus when you ask people to start paying for it. But in general, depending on the products that they are building, each product will have a different market fitment strategy. Right? So this is where the mentors really come into picture to be able to understand what is the how do I test the acceptance of this product. Right? If this product is ready to be alpha tested, what is the target segment? What is the hypothesis that I want to test? Right? In our organization, we have a gentleman who comes from a background with Indian Market Research Bureau, which was taken over by Cantor. And that's what they do. These are organizations which are specialized in running market research surveys all over the country. So I think as a TBI, if you set up an association with one of the market research organizations, they may be able to help you with gathering a lot of the data. And secondly, if you also set up another collaboration with somebody who can process that information and provide what we call our consumer insights or category insights, right? That's what helps you understand what's the traction. What's the traction within the paying customer. But excellent question.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Yes, sir, absolutely, you are right, sir. But the tracking is very tough, and most of the startups are don't even ready to put their knowledge or ready to give a stand on their what he is given to or what they want. So that is a big problem for us, even TBI, to track all the young startups. So that we are facing that kind of problems also.
Which is why this is where the funding mechanism that is there, right? The initial startup seed fund that is allocated. The purpose of that seed fund, it is not money that you just take home and the startups will just pocket and go away. The idea is that you spend that money on buying resources that give you insights, right? Whether it is consumer products or whether it is in terms of market research. A small decision, a small insight. I'll give you a little story, a backstory. One of the products that we were building happened to be